People living in Sentosa Cove are up in arms over floating sea barriers that have been put around the island recently. Now, the barriers are part of a network that's being installed around Singapore's coastline to guard against maritime threats.
But residents in the exclusive enclave say that the barriers are noisy. And according to the police, it's the first time that they've received such complaints since the project began.
Floating sea barriers like these are seen as a critical piece of Singapore's coastal defense against illegal immigrants or even terrorists. Just earlier this year, 3 foreigners had their plans scuppered by police, thanks in part to these barriers. Authorities have been installing them around Singapore since 2014 and aim to cover 70% of the nation's coastline. But for residents at Sentosa Cove, these barriers located about 50 to 70 meters away from the shoreline are posing a problem. Installation began around the island last month.
The proximity of the floating sea barrier causes a lot of problems, which is like noise nuisance, which is the constant clanging of the chains. And as long as there's sea movement, any sea movement, it just keeps on clanging. And it's amplified especially when there are big waves and passing vessels, which is all the time.
Even if we close the doors, it's still the noise comes through and it travels through the building because our building is concave shape. There's loss of quality of life and loss of property value. Both are there.
When asked, the Police Coast Guard or PCG told CNA that it planned for these barriers after consulting stakeholders including the Sentosa Cove Resort Management and Sentosa Development Corporation. PCG says it held an engagement session with residents earlier this month to address the complaints of noise. It's currently looking into feasible measures to mitigate the issue without compromising security, although it did not elaborate.
The barriers that are deployed, again, they are in a way closer closer to the residents compared to the rest of other areas in Singapore where the barriers are placed. Any solutions that we formulate will take time, and we appreciate if the residents as well as various stakeholders understand that there's a time for this process to be kicked in and for any improvements to be seen.
Residents say they support the effort to boost security and hope to work directly with authorities to find solutions. They plan to set up a formal group made up of representatives from condominium management committees and property owners.